They mocked the new trauma doctor, then a Marine general called her legend. The first-time drive. Evelyn Carter walked into the trauma wing. The room seemed to hold its breath, not in awe, but in doubt. White lights hummed overhead, machines beeped with indifferent rhythm, and a quiet, unspoken judgment followed her every step. She was smaller than most expected, younger than the stories they told themselves a trauma doctor should be, and carried a calm that many mistook for weakness. What they did not know, what no one could see yet, was that she had already survived storms far worse than this room, and that the calm she wore was forged in places where screaming never stopped. Before the story pulls you deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to quit, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Evelyn had not arrived at St. Jude Memorial by accident or luck. Her journey to that hallway had been paved with long nights, crushing losses, and an unshakable promise she made to herself years ago in a dim emergency room where her younger brother slipped away after a roadside accident. She remembered the smell of antiseptic, the frantic rush of doctors, and the unbearable stillness that followed. In that moment, she decided she would become the kind of doctor who did not freeze, who did not give up, who fought until the very last second. That promise became her compass, guiding her through medical school, residency, and finally into trauma surgery, one of the harshest, most unforgiving fields in medicine. But St. Jude Memorial was not kind to newcomers, especially not to someone like her. Whispers followed her through corridors. Nurses exchanged glances. Senior residents questioned her decisions behind closed doors. They joked that she looked more like a medical student than the hospital's new trauma specialist. Some openly wondered how long she would last before breaking. Evelyn heard it all, even when they thought she didn't. She learned to keep her eyes forward, her hands steady, and her heart guarded. The real test came on a rain-soaked Friday night when the city seemed to unravel all at once. Sirens screamed into the ambulance bay one after another. Multi-vehicle collisions, industrial accidents, and a warehouse fire flooded the trauma wing beyond capacity. Blood stained the floors. The air grew thick with urgency and fear. In that chaos, Evelyn stepped into her role without hesitation. While others panicked under the weight of too many patients and too little time, she moved with focused precision, assessing injuries, prioritizing lives, and making decisions that could not be undone. Still, the doubt lingered. Some staff hesitated to follow her lead. Others second-guessed her calls. Every delay felt like a knife twisting in her chest, but she swallowed the frustration and kept going. She reminded herself that ego had no place here. Lives mattered more than pride. As the night stretched on, exhaustion crept into every muscle. Evelyn's hands ached, her back burned, and her mind threatened to fog. Yet she pressed forward, driven by something deeper than adrenaline. Then, just before dawn, the emergency radios crackled with a call that shifted everything. A military transport had overturned on the highway outside the city. Several Marines were critically injured. Among them was a high-ranking officer, a Marine general returning from an inspection tour. The injuries were severe, the kind that often ended careers or lives. When the convoy arrived, the trauma bay fell into a heavy silence. These were not just patients, they were symbols of service, sacrifice, and national pride. The pressure mounted instantly. Every eye turned toward Evelyn as she took charge of the situation. There was no room for error, no time for fear. She assessed crushed limbs, internal bleeding, and traumatic brain injuries with unwavering focus. She coordinated teams, redirected resources, and made rapid decisions that balanced risk with hope. The general's condition deteriorated rapidly. Multiple organ systems were failing, and the odds were brutally slim. Some whispered that the effort was futile, that the injuries were too extensive. Evelyn felt the weight of every second passing, but she refused to surrender. She remembered her brother, the helplessness, the silence. She would not let that moment repeat itself if there was even the smallest chance to change the outcome. Hours blurred together as she led one of the most complex trauma interventions the hospital had ever seen. Sweat soaked through her scrubs. Her voice grew hoarse from constant commands. Yet her hands never trembled. When the final procedure was complete, the room stood still, suspended between hope and heartbreak. Slowly, impossibly, the general stabilized. Vital signs improved. Bleeding was controlled. Against all expectations, he was alive. Word spread through the hospital like wildfire. The same voices that once mocked her now spoke her name with disbelief. Nurses watched her with newfound respect. Doctors who had doubted her judgment replayed the night in their minds, realizing how close they had come to letting prejudice cloud their duty. Days later, the Marine general regained consciousness. His recovery was slow and painful, but steady. When he learned who had led the team that saved his life, he asked to meet her. Evelyn entered the recovery ward with the same quiet composure she always carried, unaware that this moment would redefine everything. The general, a man hardened by decades of service and survival, looked at her not with formality but with profound respect. He spoke of the battlefield, of trusting someone with your life in the darkest moments, and of recognizing true leadership when you see it. He later described her to hospital leadership and military officials alike as a living legend, not because she sought glory, but because she embodied courage, skill, and relentless compassion when it mattered most. Those words echoed far beyond the hospital walls. Evelyn's story spread through medical circles, military networks, and eventually into the wider community. Invitations to speak followed. Awards were offered. Yet she remained unchanged, still arriving early, still staying late, still treating every patient with the same fierce dedication, whether they were a homeless man or a decorated officer. What people never fully saw was the quiet aftermath. The nights when she sat alone in her car, letting tears fall after holding them back for hours. The memories that resurfaced every time a case mirrored her past loss. The constant battle to keep her heart open in a profession that demanded emotional armor. Evelyn carried it all, not because she was unbreakable, but because she understood the cost of giving up. Over time, the culture at St. Jude Memorial shifted. Younger doctors looked to her as proof that strength did not always roar, that leadership could be calm, and that resilience often wore a gentle face. The mocking stopped. In its place grew something rare and powerful: trust. As the years passed, Evelyn continued to save lives, mentor others, and quietly redefine what it meant to be a trauma doctor. She never corrected those who spoke of her legend status, not because she believed it, but because she knew the story was bigger than her. It was about perseverance, about standing firm when the world underestimates you, and about choosing compassion over bitterness again and again. And now, before this story reaches its final heartbeat, take a moment to comment below and tell us one word that describes how this journey made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Near the end of one long shift, as sunlight poured through the hospital windows, Evelyn paused in the hallway where it had all begun. The whispers were gone. In their place was quiet respect. She took a deep breath, adjusted her coat, and walked forward, ready for the next life that would need her steady hands. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to believe in unseen strength and quiet heroes, please like the video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive and reaching the people who need them most. Evelyn Carter never asked to be called a legend. She only chose, every single day, to show up when it mattered. And sometimes, that is more than enough.